The Galactic Medical Association's flagship vessel, the Hippocratic Oath, was the most technologically advanced medical ship in known space. Its hull gleamed with a pearlescent sheen that seemed to shift colors depending on which star system it orbited. The ship boasted healing technologies so cutting-edge that most planets' medical establishments wouldn't see similar equipment for at least a century. It had 17 specialized surgical bays, 32 intensive care units calibrated for over 300 known sentient species, and a medical AI system that contained the compiled knowledge of 12,000 years of multi-species medical advancement. And yet, according to subsection 42.7 billion of Galactic Medical Code, it also required at least one human doctor on board at all times. This made absolutely no sense to Dr. Vax Tillian, the ship's Arcturian chief medical officer. Human medicine is practically prehistoric compared to ours, he had complained during the staff meeting when Dr. Eleanor Blackwood was first introduced. His translucent blue skin pulsed with orange irritation spots. They still cut people open manually. With laser scalpels, Dr. Eleanor Ellie Blackwood corrected, crossing her arms defensively, and only when necessary. Necessity is subjective, chimed in MEDICUS, the ship's AI medical system. Its voice emanated from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, with the smug tone of an entity that had aced every medical exam ever programmed. Humans have a 37.8% higher tendency to resort to invasive procedures when non-invasive alternatives exist. That's because sometimes you need to get your hands dirty, Ellie muttered, wondering for the 100th time why she'd accepted this position. The pay was stellar, sure, but the condescension was reaching toxic levels. Dr. Gawkes, a Bellatraxian with 6 arms and compound eyes that made them look perpetually surprised, leaned forward. Is it true humans once believed diseases were caused by bad air? That was centuries ago, Ellie said with forced patience. Only 15 of your Earth centuries, corrected Nurse Plex, a gaseous entity contained in a humanoid-shaped pressure suit. My species had already mapped the complete genome of every disease in our solar system by then. We're very impressed with ourselves, aren't we? Ellie said, smiling pleasantly while mentally counting to 10. 6 months into her deployment, things hadn't improved much. The medical staff tolerated her presence as a regulatory requirement but rarely sought her input. Most days, Ellie spent her time documenting procedures she barely understood and trying not to feel like the galaxy's most useless appendix. Today was proving no different. Ellie stood in Surgical Bay 7, observing Dr. Vax Tillian perform a neural resequencing on a Dropian diplomat. The procedure would have taken Earth surgeons a 12-hour operation with months of rehabilitation. Vax was completing it in 20 minutes using the synaptic reconstructor, a device that looked like a glowing blue octopus hovering above the patient's head. Note the precision of the nanofilaments, Vax narrated, not to Ellie but to the 3 medical students floating on gravity disks nearby. They're recalibrating 73 million neural pathways simultaneously. Remarkable, breathed one student, a crystalline being who literally sparkled with admiration. MEDICUS, called Vax, increased synaptic throughput to 87%. Increasing throughput, the AI responded. Might I suggest 87.3% for optimal reconfiguration based on the patient's unusual theta waves? An excellent suggestion, said Vax, without acknowledging that the AI had corrected him. Ellie stifled a yawn. Her role in these demonstrations was basically that of a potted plant, present but decorative at best. She glanced at her datapad, scrolling through Earth news that was already weeks old by the time it reached her. An outbreak of neo-measles in Argentina. A promising new organ regeneration technique in Kenya. Quaint, archaic human medicine that her colleagues would scoff at. Human Dr. Blackwood, MEDICUS suddenly announced, making Ellie jump. The AI always addressed her with her species first, as though it were a medical condition that needed noting. Your heart rate indicates boredom. Perhaps you'd like to review the 147 ways this procedure improves upon human cranial surgery methods. Before Ellie could formulate a suitably professional response, the ship's emergency alert system activated with a soft but insistent chime. Attention, medical staff, came the captain's voice, a melodious centurion whose vocal range made everything sound like an opera aria. We've received a Priority 1 distress call from mining outpost Epsilon 9. Multiple species reporting severe symptoms of unknown origin. Oh, this supposed kill flow. Changing course now. Estimated arrival in 4 hours. All department heads report to briefing room immediately. Vaxtillion didn't miss a beat. MEDICUS, complete procedure autonomously. Students, observe and document. He glided toward the exit, passing Ellie without a glance. She followed him, wondering if today might finally give her something meaningful to do besides watching alien miracles and feeling like a medical caveman. Little did she know that the Hippocratic Oath was heading toward a situation where all that advanced technology would prove about as useful as a chocolate teapot. The briefing room of the Hippocratic Oath resembled a glossy white arena more than a conference room. In the center floated a three-dimensional holographic display of mining outpost Epsilon 9, a ramshackle collection of prefabricated structures clinging to the surface of an asteroid rich in rare minerals. Around the display sat, stood, floated, or otherwise positioned themselves the ship's department heads, representing 12 different species and almost as many different opinions on proper emergency protocol. Captain Lyra Zentori, a tall humanoid with iridescent skin that rippled like the surface of a soap bubble, gestured at the hologram. The outpost houses approximately 400 miners and support staff from 17 different species. Their medical officer transmitted this report before communications degraded. The hologram shifted to show a harried-looking Traxian medic, his exoskeleton plates clicking nervously as he spoke. We have 63 patients presenting with symptoms that don't match any known pathogen in our database. Symptoms vary by species but include. The message dissolved into static momentarily. Neural disruption, sensory hallucinations, and in some cases, complete shutdown of artificial implants. We've quarantined the affected individuals, but numbers are growing hourly. Please advise the message cut off entirely. That's all we received, said the captain, her voice producing subtle harmonics that conveyed concern. Their communications system went completely offline shortly after. Dr. Vaxtillion's skin had shifted to a deep purple, indicating intense concentration. MEDICUS? Initial assessment? The AI's voice was as smooth and confident as ever. Based on the limited data, I calculate 74% probability of a pathogen targeting the central nervous system, as with possible electromagnetic components affecting technology. Recommend level 2 containment protocols upon arrival. Agreed, said Vax. We'll dispatch diagnostic drones first to minimize potential exposure. Excuse me, Ellie spoke up. But shouldn't we prepare for direct patient contact? If their communications are down, other systems might be failing too, including medical equipment. The room fell silent as every alien eye, optical sensor, or sensory membrane turned toward her. It was the uncomfortable silence of advanced beings humoring a child. Human Dr. Blackwood, MEDICUS replied with exaggerated patience. Our diagnostic drones function on isolated power systems specifically designed to resist electromagnetic interference. They can gather more accurate data in 10 minutes than direct observation could provide in hours. Besides, added Dr. Gorks, blinking rapidly with all 4 eyes, direct contact introduces unnecessary contamination risks. Standard protocol is quite clear. Ellie nodded, knowing when to pick her battles, but something about the report nagged at her. The varied symptoms across species, the technological failures, it reminded her of something she'd encountered during her residency on Mars, though she couldn't quite place it. The captain moved the meeting along, assigning responsibilities and preparation tasks. Ellie was paired with Nurse Plex to prepare quarantine pods, the medical equivalent of being asked to set the table while the grown-ups cooked dinner. As the briefing dispersed, Ellie caught up with Dr. Vaxtillion in the corridor. I'd like permission to review our historical database on cross-species epidemics, particularly those with technological interference components. Vax's skin flickered briefly with yellow spots of surprise. If you wish, though MEDICUS has already analyzed all relevant cases. He paused, then added with what almost seemed like concern, this will likely be unlike anything in human medical experience. Perhaps observed from the secondary medical bay? Bah, Translation: stay out of the way. I'll be fine, Ellie said with a tight smile. Humans are surprisingly adaptable. 3 hours and 42 minutes later, the Hippocratic Oath glided into orbit around the asteroid housing mining outpost Epsilon 9. The ship's elegant white form contrasted sharply with the utilitarian grey structures below. More concerning was the complete darkness enveloping half the outpost. Power systems failing in sectors 3 through 7, reported the operations officer. Life support operating on emergency backups. Deploy diagnostic drones, ordered Dr. Vax Tillian from the Medical Command Center. Full spectrum analysis. Through the view screens, Ellie watched as 12 sleek silver spheres detached from the ship and descended toward the outpost. Each drone carried sensors sophisticated enough to detect individual viral particles from 100 meters away. The first drone had barely reached the outpost's main airlock when it suddenly spiraled off course, lights flickering, before crashing into the asteroid's surface. Drone 1 offline, reported MEDICUS, a hint of surprise in its synthetic voice. The second and third drones followed suit, their controlled descent deteriorating into chaotic tumbling before impact. What's happening? Demanded Vax, his skin now pulsing with red alarm patterns. Unknown interference. MEDICUS responded. Readings indicate massive power fluctuations in all deployed units just before failure. The remaining drones were quickly recalled, but 3 more failed before returning to the ship. Captain Zentori's voice came over the con. Medical team. We're receiving a weak emergency signal. Audio only. The voice that came through was distorted but understandable. Situation deteriorating. 78% of outpost systems non-functional. 112 patients now showing symptoms. Medical bay overwhelmed. Our diagnostic equipment is failing. We need immediate assistance. Ellie felt a chill run down her spine. Whatever was happening down there wasn't just affecting people, it was disabling technology too. And the Hippocratic Oath's greatest strengths were its technological marvels. We need to send a team down, she said, surprising herself with the authority in her voice, with manual medical kits. Dr. Vax Tillian's skin had gone nearly white. Extreme stress for an Arcturian. Manual kits? We haven't used those outside of training in decades. Then it's lucky you have a human on board who uses them regularly, Ellie replied, already moving toward the equipment storage. Because I think we're about to discover why that subsection 42.7 billion exists in the first place. The shuttle bay of the Hippocratic Oath bustled with frantic activity as the emergency response team prepared for deployment. Dr. Vax Tillian had reluctantly authorized a team of 6 to descend to the mining outpost, himself Dr. Gawks, Nurse Plex, 2 medical technicians, and against his better judgment Dr. Eleanor Blackwood. Remember, Vax instructed as they loaded equipment into the shuttle, minimal technology use until we understand what's causing the failures. Basic scanners only, and even those may be compromised. I've packed manual diagnostic kits, Ellie said, hefting a bag that looked positively antique compared to the sleek cases the others carried. Stethoscope, ophthalmoscope, reflex hammers, pressure cuffs. How quaint, murmured one of the techs, a cybernetically enhanced Devorian whose left eye had been replaced with a medical scanner. Perhaps we should bring leeches as well? Mock all you want, Ellie replied cheerfully. But these tools worked for human doctors for centuries without needing a power source. MEDICUS will maintain communication from orbit, Vax continued, ignoring the exchange. The shuttle's systems have been hardened against interference, but prepare for potential failure. The descent to mining outpost Epsilon 9 was tense and silent. Through the viewport, Ellie could see that more sections of the outpost had lost power since their arrival. Only the central hub still showed significant illumination, presumably where survivors had congregated. The shuttle landed with a gentle thud on the designated landing pad. As the team sealed their environmental suits of precaution until they understood the nature of the illness, Ellie noticed Dr. Gawks's hands trembling slightly. First outbreak response, she asked kindly. All 4 of Gawks's eyes blinked in unison. Is it that obvious? My species tends to practice medicine in highly controlled environments. This unpredictability is unsettling. Just stay focused on one patient at a time, Ellie advised. It works for humans. The airlock cycled open to reveal a scene of barely contained chaos. The outpost's main medical bay had overflowed, with makeshift beds lining the corridors. Miners and support staff from various species lay or sat in various states of distress. Some appeared unconscious. Others were clearly hallucinating. A Merviant was frantically trying to brush invisible insects from his fur, while a human woman repeatedly pressed non-existent buttons in the air. A harried-looking Traxian in a medical uniform rushed toward them, his exoskeleton clicking loudly in what Ellie recognized as extreme stress. Dr. KZK, Outpost Medical Officer, he introduced himself. Thank the stars you're here. We're completely overwhelmed. What exactly are we dealing with? Dr. Vaxtillion asked, his scanner already humming as he waved it over the nearest patient. Unknown, replied KZK. It started 3 days ago. First symptoms were minor headaches, disorientation. Then hallucinations began, followed by loss of motor control in some species. And the technology failures, at first we thought they were unrelated power issues, but they followed the spread of the illness exactly. Patient 0? Asked Dr. Gorks. A Terulian geologist who'd been mapping a new tunnel in Section 12, said KZK, but she showed no symptoms herself, just carried it back. Terulians seem immune, whatever it is. Vax's scanner suddenly emitted a high-pitched whine, then went dark. He tapped it in frustration. Interference already affecting our equipment. It gets worse the longer you're here, KZK confirmed. By tomorrow, I predict total technology failure throughout the outpost. The team spread out, each taking a section of the overcrowded medical bay. Ellie found herself examining a cluster of human miners, using her stethoscope and penlight to check basic vital signs. Pupils dilated but reactive, she muttered to herself, making notes on an actual paper clipboard she'd brought. Pulse elevated, respiration shallow but regular. You're using paper? Asked a passing outpost technician, looking both confused and impressed. Old reliable, Ellie replied with a wink. Never crashes, never needs charging. After an hour of examinations, the emergency team regrouped in a quiet corner. Their findings painted a confusing picture. The symptoms don't match any single pathogen profile, Dr. Gorks reported, frustration evident in his rapid eye blinking. Each species presents differently. And my scanner failed completely after 20 minutes, added the Devorian technician. Even my cybernetic eye is glitching now. Dr. Vaxtillion's skin had settled into a troubled lavender hue. Medicus, are you receiving our data? The AI's voice came through with noticeable static. Affirmative, but signal degrading. Analysis inconclusive. Recommend full quarantine and return of samples to the ship for comprehensive testing. That could take days. Ellie objected, and we don't have working sample preservation technology now. We follow protocol, Vax insisted. We'll evacuate critical patients to the ship's isolation ward and... His communication badge emitted a shower of sparks, making him yelp and tear it off. Ship communication compromised, announced Nurse Plex, their gaseous forms swirling agitatedly inside their pressure suit, and my suit's systems are showing power fluctuations. A crash from across the room drew their attention. One of the medical technicians had collapsed, twitching uncontrollably. It's affecting us now, Dr. Gorks whispered in horror. Ellie rushed to the fallen technician, her mind racing. The varied symptoms, the technology failures, the Terulian immunity, something was coming together in her mind, a pattern emerging from seemingly disconnected facts. As she checked the technician's vital signs with her manual tools, she noticed something odd. The symptoms intensified when she brought her electronic penlight near the patient's head, but lessened when she moved it away. Dr. Vaxtillion, she called out, I need you to try something. Turn off all your remaining electronic devices, completely power them down. This is hardly the time for human superstition, he began, but the desperation in the situation made him comply. Now examine the technician again, Ellie instructed. Vax-Tilian's natural senses evolved on a planet with frequent electromagnetic storms were actually quite acute without technological enhancement. After a moment, his skin pulsed with surprise. The neural disruption patterns are stabilizing, he admitted reluctantly. I think I know what we're dealing with, Ellie said, standing up with sudden confidence. And why the Galactic Medical Association insists on having humans aboard these ships. We're about to get old school, people. Within 2 hours, the medical bay of mining outpost Epsilon 9 had transformed. Under Dr. Eleanor Blackwood's direction, all non-essential technology had been powered down. Battery-powered devices were removed to a shielded chamber. The overhead lights, running on the outpost's failing backup systems, provided the only technological presence, and even those flickered ominously. In their place was a scene that could have been from a field hospital centuries ago, medical personnel using manual tools, handwritten charts tracking patient symptoms, and treatments administered without the assistance of automated systems. Pulse is stabilizing, reported Dr. Gorks, who had adapted surprisingly well to using a manual blood pressure cuff on a Zegzelian miner. A cognitive function improving too. Across the room, Nurse Plex had managed to reduce the power consumption of their containment suit to absolute minimum levels, allowing them to continue working without deterioration. They moved from patient to patient, their gaseous form shifting colors to indicate different observations, a natural biological scanner. Dr. Vax-Tilian stood in the center of it all, his skin a conflicted mixture of blue acceptance and orange irritation. I must acknowledge, human Dr. Blackwood, your hypothesis appears to be yielding positive results. Don't strain yourself with the enthusiasm, Ellie replied dryly as she checked a patient's reflexes. But thanks. What Ellie had theorized and what seemed increasingly likely was that they weren't dealing with a traditional pathogen at all. The illness manifested differently across species precisely because it wasn't targeting biology directly. It was affecting the interface between technology and biology, particularly neural interfaces and implants that most advanced species had incorporated into their bodies to varying degrees. The more technologically integrated a patient was, the more severe their symptoms. Humans, still relatively low-tech in their neural augmentation compared to most galactic species, showed milder symptoms, and Terulians, who had evolved natural electromagnetic shielding due to their homeworld's intense radiation, showed none at all. But what's causing it? Dr. KZK had asked when Ellie first explained her theory. I believe we're dealing with microscopic organisms that feed on specific energy frequencies, she'd answered. They're drawn to the power signatures of our medical equipment and neural interfaces. The more they consume, the more they reproduce, creating a cascading failure effect. Now, as primitive but effective treatment protocols were established, Ellie allowed herself a moment to savor the irony. The Hippocratic Oath, with all its miraculous healing technology, was practically useless in this situation. Meanwhile, her prehistoric medical training was saving lives. A commotion at the entrance to the medical bay interrupted her thoughts. Captain Zintori herself had arrived with a small security team, all wearing minimal equipment. Report, the captain demanded, her voice producing stress harmonics that vibrated the air. We've stabilized most patients by reducing technological exposure, Ellie answered, stepping forward before Vax-Tilian could speak. But we need to address the source of the infestation. MEDICUS was able to analyze data from the failed drones before communications deteriorated completely, the captain said. It confirms your theory, Dr. Blackwood. The organisms appear to be native to this asteroid, dormant until mining operations disturbed them. They've probably been here for millions of years, Ellie mused, evolving to consume natural electromagnetic fields in the mineral deposits. Our technology must seem like an all-you-can-eat buffet. Can we eliminate them? Asked Vax-Tilian. Not without risking the patients, Ellie replied. These organisms have integrated with their neural pathways. A direct attack might cause permanent damage. Then what do you propose? The captain's skin rippled with concern. Ellie took a deep breath. What she was about to suggest would horrify her alien colleagues, but she saw no alternatives. We need to perform manual neural pathway stimulation to help the patient's bodies recognize and reject the organisms naturally, she said. Essentially, physical therapy for the brain. That's practically medieval. Dr. Gorks exclaimed, all four eyes widening in shock. It's controlled, targeted stimulus without technology, Ellie corrected, like rehabilitation exercises after a stroke. Humans have been doing it for centuries. A heavy silence fell over the group. Finally, Vaxtillian's skin shifted to a resolute deep blue. Teach us, he said simply. For the next several hours, Ellie demonstrated techniques that would have been familiar to any human physical therapist, exercises to stimulate specific neural pathways, manual manipulation of pressure points, even simple conversation designed to activate particular brain regions. The alien medical staff, accustomed to delegating such tasks to automated systems, struggled initially. Their appendages, evolved for precision technological manipulation, fumbled with the more intuitive, responsive touch required. You're thinking too mechanically, Ellie coached Dr. Gorks, who was attempting to guide a Mervian patient through a series of eye movements. You're not repairing a machine. You're communicating with a body. Feel the resistance. Adapt to it. Slowly, progress emerged. Patients began showing marked improvement, their hallucinations receding, motor control returning. The number of critical cases dropped from 53 to 29. As night fell on the outpost, emergency lighting cast long shadows across the medical bay. Ellie sat beside an elderly human miner, guiding him through exercises to restore fine motor control in his fingers. Never thought I'd see a human doctor out here, the miner said, his voice raspy but growing stronger. Always figured those fancy aliens with their miracle machines had made our doctors obsolete. That's what they thought too, Ellie replied with a smile. Turns out there's still something to be said for the human touch. Dr. Vaxtillian approached, his exhaustion evident in his dulled skin color. He'd spent hours learning and applying Ellie's techniques with remarkable dedication. The captain wishes to evacuate critical patients to the ship, he said quietly. But MEDICUS warns that bringing these organisms aboard could compromise ship systems. We need to clear them of the infection first. Ellie agreed, and for that I have an idea. But it's going to sound even crazier than manual therapy. Vax's skin displayed a pattern Ellie hadn't seen before, perhaps the Arcturian equivalent of resigned amusement. At this point, human Dr. Blackwood, he said, I believe we are all prepared to embrace a certain level of craziness. Dawn broke over mining outpost Epsilon 9, casting long shadows through the viewports of the medical bay. Dr. Eleanor Blackwood stood before the assembled medical team, a collection of exhausted aliens who had spent the night practicing human medical techniques with varying degrees of success. Before them lay a crude diagram drawn on actual paper, yet another ancient human technology that had proven surprisingly useful in their current predicament. All right, here's what we know, Ellie began, tapping the diagram with a pencil. These organisms are attracted to specific electromagnetic frequencies, particularly those used in medical scanning technology and neural interfaces. They consume the energy, reproduce rapidly, and cause both technological failure and neurological symptoms. We've established that reducing technological exposure helps patients stabilize, Dr. Vaxtillian added, his skin now a collegial shade of blue-green. But we need to completely eliminate the infestation before evacuation. Exactly, Ellie nodded. And to do that, we're going to use the oldest trick in the pest control book, a more attractive target. You want to lure them out? Asked Dr. Gorks, all four eyes blinking in synchronization. With a custom-designed electromagnetic field, Ellie confirmed. We'll create a signal that mimics neural interfaces, but at a frequency these organisms find irresistible. Once they abandon their hosts for this tastier meal, we trap them. Persplex's gaseous form swirled skeptically in their containment suit. But any device generating such a field would be compromised almost immediately. That's why we're going analog, Ellie said with a grin. We're going to build a manually operated electromagnetic pulse generator using parts from the mining equipment. The silence that followed was profound enough that Ellie could hear the soft clicking of Dr. K's exoskeleton plates. You want to build a device, without computers, to generate a precisely calibrated electromagnetic field? Dr. Vaxtillion finally asked, his tone suggesting Ellie had proposed they flap their arms and fly to the nearest star. Humans were generating electromagnetic fields long before we had computers, Ellie responded. Tesla coils, radio transmitters, all analog technology. We can control the frequency manually by adjusting the physical components. And you know how to build such a device? Captain Zentori asked, her voice carrying harmonics of both doubt and hope. I had an unusual hobby in medical school, Ellie admitted. I restored antique radio equipment. The principles are the same. What followed was perhaps the strangest engineering project in the history of the Galactic Medical Association. Under Ellie's direction, mining technicians and medical personnel stripped down equipment to its most basic components. Electric motors, copper wire, capacitors, and resistors were assembled into what looked like a steampunk nightmare, a collection of coils and metal plates attached to a hand-cranked generator. This is either brilliant or completely insane, muttered the Devorian technician, whose cybernetic eye had been temporarily removed for his own safety. The line between the two is pretty thin in emergency medicine, Ellie replied cheerfully as she wound copper wire around a mineral core. Hand me that insulator, would you? 6 hours later, the device was complete. It stood in the center of the medical bay, surrounded by concentric circles of metal plates designed to trap the organisms once they were attracted to the field. The frequency needs to be exactly 47.3 MHz with modulation at 12 Hz intervals. Ellie instructed as Dr. Gorks prepared to manually crank the generator. Too high, and they won't be attracted. Too low, and they might bring their friends. And we determined these exact frequencies how? Asked Vaxtillion. Trial and error with my medical tricorder before it failed, Ellie admitted. Plus a bit of educated guessing based on which equipment failed first. Ready? The medical staff positioned themselves around the room, each attending to several patients. If everything went according to plan, the organisms would abandon their hosts, attracted by the irresistible electromagnetic food being offered. If something went wrong, well, Ellie preferred not to dwell on that scenario. Begin cranking, she ordered. Dr. Gorks rotated the handle at precisely the rate Ellie had calculated. The device hummed to life, a low vibration that gradually built into an audible tone. To most species, it was merely an annoying sound, but Ellie knew that across the electromagnetic spectrum, it was broadcasting a siren call. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then, a patient near the center of the room gasped and sat upright. The buzzing, the Exelian miner exclaimed, "It's gone from my head." Like a wave spreading outward, patients began reporting the same sensation. The mental static that had plagued them was disappearing. More incredibly, visible evidence of the organisms emerged. Tiny sparkling motes, like luminescent dust, began rising from the patients' bodies, floating toward the device in the center of the room. "By the 7 moons," whispered Captain Zentori, "it's working." The air filled with a gentle cloud of glittering particles, all drifting purposefully toward Ellie's makeshift electromagnetic lure. As they reached the metal plates, they gathered in increasingly dense concentrations, drawn to the precisely modulated field. "Keep cranking," Ellie encouraged Dr. Gorks, whose multiple arms were beginning to tire. "We need to get every last one." For nearly an hour, the strange migration continued. Patients who had been unconscious for days began to stir. Those suffering from hallucinations reported their visions clearing. Even the outpost systems showed signs of recovery as the technology-consuming organisms abandoned their feast for the more appealing bait. Finally, when the last visible particles had joined the shimmering mass contained within the metal plates, Ellie gave the signal. "Cut the field," she ordered, "and seal the containment vessel." As the generator wound down, the collected organisms swirled in agitation, seeking the energy source that had suddenly vanished. But the specially designed plates, fashioned from the same minerals that had originally housed the dormant organisms, effectively trapped them. Transfer to sealed containment complete, reported Dr. K with a series of relieved clicks. No detectable organisms remaining in patients or systems. A cheer erupted throughout the medical bay, a cacophony of sounds from a dozen different species expressing the universal emotion of relief. Patients embraced medical staff, regardless of anatomical compatibility. Dr. Gawkes' eyes were blinking so rapidly they appeared to be strobing. Ellie allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before turning to Dr. Vax-Tillion. Now we can safely evacuate the critical patients to the ship. Their bodies need time to recover from the neural stress. Vax's skin displayed a complex pattern of blue, green, and small spots of what might have been, though Ellie could hardly believe it, admiration. "Human Dr. Blackwood," he said formally, "I believe I owe you an apology." "For thinking human medicine is prehistoric?" Ellie asked with a raised eyebrow. "No, it is prehistoric," Vax replied, then added with what approximated an Arcturian smile, "But perhaps being prehistoric has its advantages in a universe full of unexpected challenges." 3 days after the crisis at mining outpost Epsilon 9, the Hippocratic Oath resumed its regular patrol route through the sector. The ship's systems had fully recovered once the electromagnetic consuming organisms were safely contained in a specialized research module. All patients had been either treated aboard the ship or left recovering at the outpost's now functioning medical bay. Life aboard the galaxy's most advanced medical vessel was returning to normal, with one significant difference. Dr. Eleanor Blackwood stepped into Surgical Bay 3, where Dr. Vax-Tillion was preparing for a particularly complex procedure on a Cantarian diplomat. The operation would normally have been routine with the ship's advanced surgical suite, but Vax had specifically requested Ellie's presence. "Ah, human Dr. Blackwood," he greeted her, his skin a confident professional blue. "I was hoping you might observe this procedure and perhaps suggest any manual contingencies should our systems encounter difficulties." Ellie tried not to look too surprised, happy to help. "Though I doubt you'll need low-tech solutions for a standard neural realignment." "One never knows," Vax replied seriously. "Recent events have highlighted certain gaps in our preparedness." From the surgical suite speakers, MEDICUS chimed in. "I have adjusted my diagnostic protocols to include parallels with historical human medical practices," the AI announced. "While statistically unlikely to improve outcomes in most scenarios, I calculate a 3.7% chance of encountering situations where such approaches provide unique advantages." "High praise indeed," Ellie murmured with a smile. "Additionally," continued MEDICUS, in what almost sounded like embarrassment, "I have begun archiving your manual techniques for incorporation into medical training simulations." Before Ellie could respond to this unprecedented acknowledgement, the ship's alert system activated. Captain Zentori's melodious voice filled the room. "A medical team to emergency response stations. We're receiving a distress call from the Gavarian colony ship Eternal Spring. They report a rapidly spreading condition affecting their neural interfaces. Symptoms include technological disruption and hallucinatory episodes." Ellie and Dr. Vax-Tillion exchanged knowing glances. "The neural interfaces failing and causing hallucinations," Ellie said. "Sounds familiar." "Indeed," Vax replied, his skin rippling with a pattern of thoughtful turquoise. "Perhaps our recent experience will prove valuable." Captain Zentori's voice continued over the comm. "Dr. Blackwood, Dr. Vax-Tillion, I'd like you both to lead the response team. Your combined approach to the outbreak at Epsilon 9 suggests you'll work well together on this." "On our way, Captain," Ellie replied, already moving toward the door with Vax following close behind. As they strode through the corridor toward the shuttle bay, other medical personnel fell in step with them. Among them was Nurse Cora, now fully recovered and eager to assist. "Dr. Blackwood," Vax said as they walked, his tone more collegial than she'd ever heard from him before, "I believe we should prepare both technological countermeasures and those—" "What did you call them?" "Old-school diagnostic techniques." Ellie nodded. "Agreed. MEDICUS can analyze their neural interface schematics while we put together emergency kits with manual tools." "I've already begun the analysis," MEDICUS announced through their communicators. And may I suggest including the modified tricorders Dr. Blackwood developed for Epsilon 9. Their shielding may prove effective against similar electromagnetic anomalies. That's actually a good idea, Ellie said, unable to hide her surprise at the AI's endorsement of her jury-rigged equipment. As they entered the shuttle bay, Dr. Vax-Tillion paused and turned to face Ellie. His skin shifted to a rare shade of violet that she'd never seen before, one that denoted sincere respect in Cerulean culture. "Dr. Blackwood," he said formally, "I must acknowledge that your unconventional methods have demonstrated considerable merit. While I still maintain that technological precision is optimal in controlled environments, your adaptability in crisis situations has proven invaluable." Ellie smiled. "And I've gained a new appreciation for the protocols I used to complain about. Turns out, there's a time and place for both approaches." "Indeed," Vax agreed. "Perhaps the ideal medicine is neither purely technological nor purely intuitive, but a synthesis of both." MEDICUS chimed in. "If I may, doctors, I have found that integrating Dr. Blackwood's improvisational approaches with standard protocols increases successful outcome probability by 22.4% in non-standard emergency scenarios." "Well then," said Captain Zentori, who had appeared at the shuttle bay entrance, "it seems the Hippocratic Oath has evolved into something even more effective than before. The best of technological precision combined with human intuition." She gestured toward the waiting shuttle. "The eternal spring awaits your expertise, both technological and intuitive." As they boarded the shuttle, Ellie glanced at her team, the brilliant Cerulean doctor, whose skin now displayed patterns of collaborative purpose, the recovered nurse checking supplies with practiced efficiency, and the ship's AI whose invisible presence had somehow become more human. Their differences hadn't disappeared, but they had transformed from sources of conflict into complementary strengths. The shuttle doors closed, and the Hippocratic Oath's finest medical team, a blend of cutting-edge technology and timeless human ingenuity, set off to face their next challenge, but stronger together than they had ever been apart.